Hey, allihopa. I thought I'd come in with a bit of Swedish this afternoon. I hope you're all having a good time. I work for the International Organization for Migration, which is the UN Migration Agency. My organization has about 169 member states, so it's an intergovernmental organization. And we specialize in the field of migration. So we manage migration, we help migrants, we serve migrants. So it's partly humanitarian and also very interstate, intergovernmental. I work for the Data Steering Group, and the Data Steering Group is a group of data stakeholders in the organization that were told by the Director General that you need to come together and collaborate. Why? Because we had two data websites in the same organization having the same information with different numbers, and it became a very embarrassing situation. And that's how I happened. I kind of stumbled into the role that I'm in today. Ooh. I can't use my clicker. Over here, I can use the computer, right? There we go. So today, I'm going to talk about how I stumbled upon the do no harm principle and innovation and data governance. Then I'm going to move on to talk about what it means, what the do no harm principle is. Then move on to what do we mean? How does do no harm, innovation, and data governance all come together? And then we're going to talk about the bigger picture. Why is it important? Okay. I have a friend of mine, Haru. We've been friends for over 13 years now. We studied the same thing. We've been sitting next to each other since we were 14. We studied law. And we speak like once in 2 or 3 months. And every time we have a conversation, we always start talking about, oh, what is your purpose in life? It becomes very existential and tears and everything, you know. And in one of our conversations, I was like, I'm so frustrated. I studied law and I'm doing data. I don't count. I'm a lawyer. I don't count. I don't do numbers. And I just said, oh, come on, stop complaining. Data is like evidence in court, Rutendo. You know, you have to make sure that when people use data for innovation, they're actually using good data. It's just like evidence. In the law of evidence, you can't bring inadmissible evidence in a case. It'll be thrown out. You can't use the evidence if it's not admissible. And so I started thinking about this, and I thought, hey, I can get up in the morning and still live out my purpose. You know, I'm helping people. I'm making sure that the data that my organization has is actually fit for purpose. And then suddenly I started to panic, and I was like, what? So that means I need to do my job right. And that's how I kind of stumbled upon do no harm. Because in my head, I was thinking, well, data governance can fix everything. That's what I do, right? We make sure that we have security. We make sure that the data it's quality data. We make sure that we have standard operating procedures. We have people who are accountable. We're good to go. And then I sat down for a moment. I was like, nah, that's not going to make sure that we're ethically using the data that we need. So then, one day, we were in a meeting, and one of the data stakeholders said, I've got this mission that just called, and they want to do this crazy stuff with the data that we have, because we collect a lot of data from very different places. So we have counter-trafficking data from victims of trafficking, and we have data from vulnerable migrants like children. We have data from people that are moving from one country to another in a region. We have stock data, we have flow data. And all of this, we have reporting data, we have our financial data. And so how the organization works is very decentralized. So we have our headquarters in Geneva, and then we have missions and regions. But then at mission level, the mission can decide we're going to collect, because either way we have to collect data when we do our needs assessment. Before you start a project, we collect data to see what is it that this community needs? What is it that these migrants need? Is it a migrant center? Is it a counter-trafficking problem? In some instances, the government will come to us and say, listen, we have an issue with this. We need your help. So it could be, for example, now I'm currently working on the Pan-African Forum on migration, and one of the issues we're talking about is reintegration. So we have many, many migrants that are coming back from Europe and from the Middle East, back into the Horn of Africa. So that is Ethiopia, Somalia, coming down all the way to East Africa. And so governments are saying, please help us. What do we do? So we have varied kinds of data. So one of the stakeholders said to us, there's this mission, and they've got this project, and I don't know how to tell them no. And this was about the time that I started thinking about innovation. And suddenly a light bulb went into my head. Because I put up my hand in the meeting and I said, well, I'm just a data governance officer. But I think we need more data governance. And then my boss looked at me and he's like, really? That's going to solve our problem. But then we started working on this set of guidelines after this meeting. And this stakeholder said, what we need is a system or a principle that we apply with data governance to enable people in situations that are stressful not to, scurry around and waste time or feel that something is impeding them from doing their job because they have to apply ethical considerations. And that's when we came up with we didn't come up with it. We borrowed it from the humanitarian world, the do no harm principle. And what the do no harm principle is, in effect, is that when you get into a situation, you want to start a project, or you want to do something innovative, you want to help a community, after you've done your assessment, your needs assessment, the step further is, what are the connectors? Because essentially, whatever business model you have, you're working with people. So you look at the context in which you're in. Let's say you are in Syria, and you want to do something, you want to do a project that helps communities to have bread because all the bakeries are bombed. But people still need to eat, and there's still people in Syria. What do you do? So the do no harm principle says, look at the connectors. What are the things, or what are the instances that connect people? Then you look at the dividers. What are the things that divide people? What are the things I need to take into account? Do I need to take into account gender? For example, let's say you establish a bakery. You manage to do that. That's great. But one thing you haven't taken into consideration, for example, in Syria is men stand in their own line to buy bread. Women and children stand in their own line to buy bread. And those are the different instances you need to take into account. Whatever use you have for data, whatever use you have for innovation, you need to take in the do no harm principle. So then we started writing the principles, the best practice in humanitarian for data protection. So these are the guidelines that we came up with in order to answer this question. And one of the things was, innovation is good. Everybody loves innovation. That's why we're here, right? But what is an appropriate solution? If we're thinking of innovation in terms of appropriate solution, what is an appropriate solution, right? And a lot of people in the organization, and just people I've met over these past few months, have said, no, but how can innovation be bad? I mean, we're solving a problem. And my answer to that is always, well, yeah, we're always constantly solving problems. But if you solve a problem and in effect, it isn't the right solution. There needs to be the right solution to the specific problem in a specific context. One of the things that helped me to understand this is the questions, what do we want to do? We want to do a project, we want to innovate, we want to use this data. The next question is, with what do we want to do it with? What tools do we need to do it with? And I think of tools in terms of data governance. Those are tools. We've got a set of data. I'm biased, I'm a data governance practitioner. So we've got a set of data. And then we need to move forward to that. So we have the, what do we want to do? How do we do it? And then for what reason? Why? And I call it the people-centered approach for people. It doesn't matter what enterprise you're in. It doesn't matter whether you're in the UN system or you're in a financial institution or you work with just data and that's your core business. But the essence of what we do and why we do it is people. We're bringing solutions to make life better for people. Even if it's a music company that you have, you're making sure that somebody gets their favorite song at a click of a button. And this is the essence of what we came down to. So, when we speak about the do no harm principle and innovation, essentially what we're saying is data governance is good, it's great, it gives us guardrails. And what do we mean by guardrails? How many of us here drive? How many of us here are good drivers? I'm not. I have this attention deficit when I'm driving. I like to talk and drive and use my hands, and people, when they drive with me, they're always like, oh, whoa, watch out, And I always feel that when I did my road test, I possibly should have really paid a lot more attention to the part where it says you need to pay attention. I didn't. And I feel that data governance is just that. It tells you to pay attention. It's like guardrails when you're driving on a cliff. You get guardrails, those things that are on the cliff side, right? We all know what I'm talking about? Yeah, you get guardrails. And I see data governance, GDPR. And why do I say that? Take data quality, for example. If you have bad data and the quality of your data is not good, how can you innovate with that data? If the quality of your data is bad, can you innovate with that data? Yes, you can. You can innovate with that data. But will your innovation be good? I doubt it. I doubt that you can have good innovation from bad data. Let's take roles and responsibilities, for example. If you have, in data governance assigns roles and responsibilities for everyone, like the RASI table, where you have somebody who's responsible, accountable, somebody who should be consulted, and somebody who should be informed. Now, let's say something goes wrong. For example, one day the Director General woke up, there were 2 websites with the same information, different numbers. Same information, different numbers. He comes to the office, he's frustrated, but he doesn't know who to talk to about it because there was no data governance system. Nobody was responsible. Nobody was accountable, so there was no one to fire. It could be a good thing, but a bad thing because staff don't work with accountability. When they use that data, they're not accountable. What about security? What about security? How about making sure that the kind of data that you have is encrypted in a specific way when you're sharing it to a specific place and it gets there in a specific way? Those are the kind of things, those are the guardrails that you have. They don't only protect beneficiaries or the people which you serve, but it also protects an enterprise. With the coming into force of the GDPR, I know most enterprises are like, oh, GDPR, where are the lawyers in the organization or in the enterprise? So that we know how to deal with this. And I think of whenever we're starting to innovate, whenever we're starting on a new project and embarking on something new, having these guardrails in place for us to go forward makes us feel safe. As a staff member, I know that when I handle data, I have these kind of access controls. I have to respect the beneficiary's right to privacy. I have to understand that this person is responsible, I am accountable. It makes me work better, I'm more at ease as I work. Now, I don't know, some people feel like, oh, but doesn't data governance, and then now we're talking about ethics, doesn't that kind of impede us from doing the work that we want to do? Aren't we going to nervously innovate? I think not. I think it enables us to do better. Why? Because it builds creativity. Have you ever been in a situation that normally people say, oh, but there's no way out of this? And I know that all of us here are problem solvers because we're innovators. We love to innovate. I hope I'm right. And what it does when you reach a place where you have barriers and you feel like, oh, but I can't use this data, perhaps because it's marked as confidential or it's marked as secret, it can't be used for this purpose, or I can't interact it with this kind of system because then it would have to be public. What happens when you have those standards in terms of innovation is you become creative. Okay, I'm not saying illegal, I'm saying creative. You become creative on how better to use the data or how better to interact, use a different system. Use it differently, encrypt the things that you don't need, use what you need. Even when you're collecting, you start to become creative about how do I make sure that I only collect exactly what I need and I don't have to collect what I don't need. That's what we mean about guardrails and standards. But then when we're talking about purpose and people, we're talking about going a step further than just the standards that you have. See, data governance, GDPR, those are legal standards, or those are regulations, right? That just exist. Ethics makes us go a little bit of a step further. It's a step further than just regulations or legal. It makes us true to purpose. It makes us accountable because we're all people working for people. It also helps us to understand that we don't innovate for things, we innovate for people. And this one of my favorite quotes is, there is a way to do it better. Find it. And I like to live by this principle because I work in a very bureaucratic system. And whenever I think, oh man, this cannot be done, I always think, but yes, it can. I'm an innovator. There is a way that this can be done. It just has to be done better. There's a better way of doing it. We'll find it. And the bigger picture here is the world has this 2030 agenda. It's the Sustainable Development Goals. And everybody, especially in the UN system and in the government, is geared towards these sustainable developmental goals. And putting together ethics, data governance, and innovation kind of gives us a balance and keeps us focused on where we want to go. We want everybody to reach the 2030 agenda, leaving no one behind. This is what member states decided, that we're leaving no one behind. And I know this may be something that is too idealistic. How can you leave no one behind? But it's a good goal to have. At least you know we have a certain goal. That's ideal. This is where we want to go. And taking these tools with us makes us go in that direction. Now I have some key takeaways. One of them that I want to drive home is that data governance does help us. It helps us to be creative. It helps us put in place some ethical considerations. Remember context, remember drivers, remember connectors. Also, it keeps us principled, keeps us true to purpose. Also, remember that we innovate for people and not for things. It keeps us accountable, and we continue to innovate. Thank you very much. Any questions?